And welcome to Debate 4-on-1. Thank you so much for joining us and making time for the program. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. It is Monday, and of course, a new one right here on the program, and of course, a new topic here in the program. 7 Mondays left to Christmas for those who love Christmas, just for information. But of course, that's not the topic for discussion tonight. We're talking about the issue of doing business in Rwanda. How are we faring? Of course, looking at the World Bank Doing Business Report 2016, we have slipped, and it's time to find answers to the questions that so many of you probably have out there. All you can do to be part of the program is tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe, or you can tweet at Debate411. Start tweeting, use the hashtag Debate411. Let me now introduce my panelists on the program. We have none other than the Chief Executive Officer of RDB, Francis Gatare. Welcome and thank you for being on the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Eugene.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also with us is none other than my good friend Robert Matthew from the Capital Markets Authority, the man with the money. Welcome to Debate 4-on-1.
Great, thank you, Eugene.
Gahamanyi is the one who puts his ears on the ground on business issues and is here to help us look at the numbers in terms of the analysis. Welcome to Debate 4-on-1.
Thank you, Eugene.
All right, so we're going to be talking about this issue of doing business in Rwanda, the doing business environment, the reforms spearheaded by the Rwanda Development Board. But before we get to the key questions, Bona Francis, the World Bank has just issued, actually not has just, it did issue the report in terms of the 2016, and Rwanda has performed dismally poorly in terms of those who have been looking at the numbers. Those who say we are from number this, we are from number 55 to number 62.
Correct. That's correct.
And for some people, this is a big drop, and they feel like there's a silence in this. Because previously, when we did well, when the World Bank came up with good numbers, we saw tweets flying all over the place about this good news. We saw press releases sent out. This time, it's silence. What's going on?
Well, this is what's going on. Rwanda has done exceedingly well. 6 new reforms that were captured in this report. Number 2 in Africa overall. But as you suggested, within the global ranking, it looks like we did score worse than last year. But a lot of it has nothing to do with the business environment in Rwanda, nor does it have anything to do with the reforms that we did or did not do, but it has to do with the new methodology that the World Bank has been implementing over the last 2 years that seem to be shifting certain countries into clusters of their economies than others. And as a result, you have seen Rwanda scoring highest in Africa among the most registered new reforms, advancing to be number 2 after only Mauritius in Africa, still number 1 in East Africa, and improving 7 places. But the new methodology pushed Rwanda from last year's ranking of 42 now to 55, and therefore also going to 62.
Before we go to the methodology and bring in the other gentlemen here, how do you then explain this silence? You know, probably you could be the first official speaking for the very first time about this particular ranking. There seems to be a lot of silence at RDB about this. Are we shying away from what we have performed and how we performed?
We are not shying away from what we are very proud of, because the business environment in Rwanda continues to do better. We continue to carry out important reforms that make our economy very competitive compared to many within our region and even on the continent, in fact, even globally. However, the World Bank report has been working on its methodology that we believe is actually compromising its credibility a bit. And we can talk about it later.
Hold that thought before we go to the methodology. Gahamanyi, first of all, the explanation by the good CEO here that we've still performed well. Come on, we're still number 2 in Africa. We're still number 1 in the region. What are you saying? What do you mean by dropping? This is what he's saying.
I think he's relatively right. But as you rightly pointed out, there's been that silence about the current rankings. Yes, we all know that this report gathers public relation around it. when it is released, and it's a very important report for politicians, because that's what they refer to, or that's what they cite when they are pitching for foreign direct investments, and even aid within the international community and the donors. So if you have that slip internationally, it might not reflect well when you're going to pitch for these investments.
So you'd rather keep quiet.
Aid. So
that's not true. Because you see, we haven't launched it here in Rwanda, you see.
So this is why there's silence? No one is talking too much about it?
That's correct, because there's a launch that is coming up in Rwanda. You see, what has happened is there's been a global launch. But at country level, we usually do country level launches at a convenient time. So we are working with our World Bank partners for a convenient time later this month to have a time when we talk about the details of the ranking in Rwanda, global rankings, what it means to the business environment here. And you'll be hearing a lot about it, Gahamanyi, and you'll be participating.
But Gahamanyi, before Bwana Mathu comes in, is this the same scenario as to what happens when we have ranked well? Do we wait and say, no, we still haven't done a local, launch of it? Or we usually, it's pop, immediately we have these releases, we have the tweets saying we've really done well.
There's a bit of change in terms of the way they're responding to this report. Because when you talk to media practitioners, they'll tell you that now it's even difficult to get a quote regarding this report. So I don't know whether you have to wait for the launch of the report, country launch, in order to get a quote from an institution. And yes, like you pointed out, if you are doing well, let's talk about it. Even if you're not doing well, let's talk about it and explain the issues that surrounding that decline and slide in what we are experiencing. In the performance. But what tells you that probably there's something not very right is the silence and the difficulty by journalists to get the quotes from the institution. Yes. Maybe they don't know what to say, but probably CEO will say. But before you come in, CEO, let me bring in Bwana Mathu here, who's silently watching as the cookie crumbles. Gahamanyi said this is a good report for politicians. This is what they use when they're going to, discuss their case to foreign direct investors. Do you agree that this is just a good report for investors? And how is it important for you, for people like you in the capital markets?
Well, from where we sit, first of all, the numbers presented here by the CEO, to which you factually confirmed, are enviable from any angle, because this is very good performance. And I think my colleague here will agree. But what happens also is that sometime with the media is, I don't know whether to call it fatigue. If I win a gold medal every day consistently for so long, sometime when I pick it up, it might not excite him. So I think, as he says, the noise will start when the launch is done, and that is how business normally responds. It's not a scoop for them, so maybe that's why they are challenging the CEO. But the thing is, to me, this is very good performance.
You feel it's a good performance. It's enviable. Yes. But CEO, there are people who are saying, listen, this is in a case of a school environment, for example, where a student has been given an exam, and of course, the exam results have come out, the student has dropped, and all they're saying is, you know what, this teacher didn't come to teach, this teacher did not show me what would... Excuses. A father would tell their child, I've paid your school fees, I've given you everything you need. Why are you giving me excuses for dropping instead of performing even better? What would you tell?
I would challenge anyone to tell me any country in Africa that has done more reforms than Rwanda in the 2016 Doing Business report of the World Bank. I would challenge any other country that has advanced closer to being number one in Africa than Rwanda. I would challenge anyone to give me any country that has been consistent being among the top reformers globally over the last 10 years than Rwanda. So Rwanda continues to be a high performer in implementing reforms that make the business environment in our country very competitive. However, the World Bank, whose report is very important to many countries, has been undergoing some methodological changes that unfortunately are interfering with some of the comparability of the rankings that we have year to year. Because last year's ranking is nowhere close to being compared to this year's ranking or to the year before. Because the tools that have been used to rank countries this year are totally different. New methodologies are introduced and interpretations of existing ones are introduced. And so that's why you are beginning to see people thinking, well, let's wait and see the trend so that we can begin to see how our countries, our economies are performing over a period of time and capture that story of the consistency in implementing reforms rather than looking at an isolated data point of a year and say, this is how we did, and therefore there's something to celebrate about it. Yes.
Gahamanyi, because he mentions the issue of the World Bank methodology, you are definitely marinating my mind into going into it, but of course we'll jump into it at the right particular time.
Yes.
But he mentions the issue of how the methodology is affecting, or has affected Rwanda for that case. But there are countries that have improved under the same methodology. Kenya, for example, you know, has been mentioned as among the improvers. So how would you take those views as valid, you know, reasons as to why we have dropped?
Well, I wouldn't want to get into the details of the scientific methods that have been deployed to carry out this research. Because if you're doing good, you're always going to perform well, despite the shift in the methodology. But yes, the CEO has rightly pointed out how the country has made various reforms. But this is more or less like, if I look at this report and the reforms and everything, you may want to compare it with marriage and wedding. It doesn't mean that because you had a colorful wedding, then the marriage is going to be successful. Yes, there have been reforms. But then, in terms of laws and regulations and everything, but how do we have real practical issues in place? Yes, these reforms, actually you can see, if you're going to register business, then you can see that it's not going to take you longer. But the question is, from there, after registering the business, what happens?
Yes.
I think that's what
let's bring Matthew first, and then the CEO will be able to probably explain that better. Matthew, practically for you in the Capital Markets Authority, how have the Rwandan doing business reforms have been of impact for the, you know, the markets itself?
Well, to be honest with you, it has been very positively significant.
Could you explain that deeply and practically?
Number one, I mean, free movement of capital. When we are talking about integration with Rwanda, with the community, but you know, this has gone beyond even the region. Anyone is free to bring in capital and take out their investment and the benefits from that investment to anywhere in the world. The other important things are some of the tax or what we call fiscal incentives that we are going to see investors going to, benefit from. And this has encouraged investors to actually look at our market. The others from where we sit again, from the investment world, the capital market, it is very, very important that we reform the financial sector in such a way that we develop institutional capacity to mobilize capital, have it professionally managed, and channel it to the best returning investment in an environment that provides governance. This has already happened. Give you an example. The latest was publication of the pensions law. Already where we sit, we have already started receiving applications for asset managers in our industry. So we are actually now at the receiving end of, in a positive way, in terms of benefiting from these reforms.
So what has not happened? What would you openly look at the CEO here and say, you know what, from your body at RDB, when you're doing your reforms, these are the areas that you need to really focus on?
Well, what I should say is that they should maintain making noise in terms of making sure that our presence, the presence of the economy and investment opportunities are there in Rwanda. That should continue, because also there are things that take a little bit longer to achieve, but once achieved, they are really permanent.
Like which one?
Well, mobilization of long-term capital. It takes time for pension funds, especially international fund managers, to look at a setting, at an environment. First they bring money, or they walk in first and decide to set up office, house, and all that. So this
that
is
takes
why
time and it affects the business.
It takes
Are
time.
you aware of that problem?
I am aware of that, but let me be clear. The World Bank's doing business report is important, but it's not enough. While it's important to signal what is happening in the economy, what business environment requires is a lot wider than that. And we are under no illusion as a country that only the 10 indicators that are tracked by this report are sufficient for transforming a business climate. And so that's why we collaborate with many different publications, whether it's doing business of the World Bank or World Economic Forum or the Gallup polls that are continuously looking at our business environment and publishing it. But most importantly, looking at what the feedback is from the business people in our economy and translating that into the reforms that we undertake. That said, the doing business reform indicators themselves that we have been tracking and implementing have had tremendous improvement within our economy. Let me take 2 or 3 examples. Let's say opening a business. About 6 years ago, it used to take 22 days to open a business, and it used to cost about 20% of the average income of a Rwandan. Today, it takes no more than 6 hours to open a business, and it costs 0.
And before you move to the next point, that CEO, today, people say it's no longer an issue. There's now a flip side of it, which Gamani mentioned. After opening, what next?
Well,
some of them don't even live to see their second anniversary.
Well, let's talk
Let's
talk about the financial services sector that that Mr. Matthew was talking about.
Yes.
6 years ago, it was difficult to get credit for most average Rwandans because the banks had no credit records of anyone, because we did not have an independent credit reference bureau. Today, as a result of having an independent credit reference bureau, banks are able to know who is category 1, who is category 2, who is category 3, and therefore be able to assess the risk
and give them a
associated with loans. That has made it a lot easier to access financing within the existing banking sector.
The sad news is that when you ask an SME, what are your biggest challenges? Access to finance still tops the list.
That's correct. Because we have this in place, it has improved the access to finance, but it does not mean that now it's free access to finance. There are still some areas to cover, and we are under no illusion that we have reached the panacea of the business environment within our country. There's still some mileage to cover, but what we observe is that there is a tremendous improvement that is happening, and thus making our economy very competitive. But we continue to push to be among the top 10 reformers, among the top 10 best environments to do business in the world. And until we get there, we are not going to be satisfied.
Super. Gamani, listening to the CEO and pointing out the areas that they have reformed and the impact on the ground, because when we were starting the program, you were very quick to say, you know, the reforms themselves is almost like a marriage, where it doesn't mean you have a happy marriage, you have a happy, you know, a happy wedding, you have a happy marriage. And now he's mentioning some of those areas. What are your concerns? What runs in your mind when you hear that?
Let me point out a few things. Let's take an example of ease of access to electricity, for instance.
Yes.
And this is where this report sometimes gets it wrong. And that's why I'm saying it's a very important document for politicians to carry out their public relations work and the policymakers. You see, when they say that it's easier now to access electricity or getting connected to electricity, it doesn't mean that that also reflects
that people are now connected.
The consistency in power supply and the cost of power that you're going to be using as a business. And you know that we have electricity challenges in this country. You know that we have probably the highest, our electricity costs are the highest in the region. So can you tell me the link between accessing electricity and getting that electricity consistently at an affordable price? Mm-hmm. Let's go to the ease of access to finance. You talk about, yes, there is the banks and financial institutions can now capture the information about their clients, the borrower and everything. Yes. But the cost of capital is still high. You see? Now, that's why I'm saying that we need to get into the real reforms rather than looking at these
unreal reforms. The opposite of real is unreal.
Well, I think
this is exactly what he's trying to say.
Let me take the generous role. Let me ask, like what reform, for example, would you like to see change that? Because you see, yes. Eugene.
And this is a question also going out to the public, right?
Exactly.
Or whoever is out there that feels that they can answer this question.
But it's also an important question that when we are having a debate like this, that we also, when we're talking about real reforms, we are also being realistic, right? Because the realistic thing is that within our economy, there are going to be some important changes that will have to continue to happen to make our economy not only competitive, but also cost effective. And those are some of the things that we are still working on. For example, the amount of deposits, the savings culture of our people, the attitude to live within our means so that we can have more savings available within our banking sector. All those things that are cultural, but also that are individual at your level, Mr. Gahamanyi, at your level, Mr. Anangwe, that will all contribute to our economy to become competitive. That needs to happen. And so what we talk about is how can you be part of the reform agenda? How can we all be part of this reform agenda so that our economy can provide the kind of capital?
He talked also about a practical thing.
Yes.
That was the issue of electricity. and of course, part of the reason why we probably did dismally, poorly, according to those who are talking about the numbers of moving from one position to another. Electricity, access to it, connectivity, that was part of the problem.
I think on that, I was tempted to intervene when Gahamanyi was talking.
Now you can intervene.
In terms of reforms, there is usually, first of all, the playing field. Mm-hmm. At this level, the World Bank has been undertaking these surveys, doing business. And actually what is happening now, up to this level, is making sure the playing field, can accommodate successful ventures. For instance,
are you saying initially they were not?
Yeah, because, I mean, we are making reforms so that we become responsive, to the needs of development, needs of attracting investments, needs of putting appropriate governance structures in place. So even if you had a lot of money somewhere, you would not be willing to put the money if the playing field is not clear to you. And I think this is part of it. You enable someone, first of all, to be able to register a business very fast. That is the first step. And then after that, the other thing also is that you make it possible for somebody to learn how to save. Somebody is accessing capital. Then you suddenly realize actually that to access that credit, you need to be in a certain form yourself. You have to be structured in a specific, you need to have certain attributes that, hey, a bank is lending you money, they will need some collateral. There's no shortcut about it. They won't give you money out of, they will also need data about your credit rating. So that's why I'm saying that these initial reforms that are taking place will be able to accommodate those challenges that he is raising. For instance, the issue of the cost of capital, which has an impact even on the cost of generating energy, will come after the reforms have been implemented to the last mile. Because ultimately, to be able to mobilize the level of investment that you require to generate the energy that you need, the environment itself has got to be in such a way that it can attract and permanently contain capital.
As we still sit somewhere and dream and think of that and wish for that to happen, let's talk about the realistic part of it.
Yes.
On the ground, these reforms that we're talking about, can we pinpoint practically and say, okay, we made it easy for people to, start up their businesses.
Correct.
This has been the impact. We've been able
Correct.
to have this number of businesses. And not just have them, but of course, have them sustained in equal measure, and even more have added on top of that.
Correct.
CEO.
In the last 3 years alone, more than 200% increase in new businesses that have started. A lot of them outside Kigali, in the rural areas, as more Rwandans became aware that starting a business is easy, it's accessible, and that they can do it to employ themselves and employ others. A lot of them also using the services, but also the goods that they produce. Second, we have seen a lot of people begin to access the banks as the different savings and credit schemes
Numbers,
open.
CEO, numbers.
Well, the central bank monitors what's happening within the financial services sector. Today, access to finance in Rwanda is the top in Africa at more than 75%.
So these people who are complaining about accessing finance, these are people who don't live in Rwanda.
That's not what I'm saying. That
Yes.
is people who don't live in Rwanda. Access to finance has increased so tremendously that more than 75% of Rwandans today can access finance, whether it's in a bank, in a savings and credit scheme, or any other financial intermediary they may have. This is also available online on the mobile banking and other facilities that are available. All these are as a result of the reforms that have been undertaken to make it easy to not only access finance, but also to start a business with this finance. There are issues of perception, however. It's very easy to change things on the ground. It's another to change things in people's minds on the perception. Every day, when we meet people all over the world, there are many who still see and think about Rwanda as the country they saw on CNN in 1994. Is that true?
So the perception has to change.
The perception has got to change,
And
as
you talk
globally,
of
but also as individuals on the
Yes.
ground.
As you talk of perception, what perception do you think these rankings now are going to be having in terms of the impact it's going to have on Rwanda's call for getting foreign direct investment, as Gahamanyi said? When we come back from
Sure.
the break, he'll be giving you that answer.
Thank you.
Of course, let's move the conversation even forward when we come back. Practically speaking, I'll be reading your comments on Twitter. All you need to do is join the conversation that many people are already joining out there. I'm seeing so many tweets coming through out there, like Janvier. I'll be reading that, of course, with some other people out here who are already tweeting. Just all you need to do is just tweet at Debate411. And of course, you can tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. We're talking about doing business in Rwanda. What's your own experience? Do you feel the reforms that the good CEO is talking about here, are they practically working for you out there? Talk to us. We'll be back in a moment.
Shop at Nakumatt TTC and Nakumatt Kigali City Tower and enjoy 50% discounts on home living face towels, bath towels, and hand towels. Grab this great opportunity and get yourself selected carpets at a half price. Hurry, hurry, hurry while stocks last.
Terms and conditions apply. Nakumatt, you need it. We've got it.
So Natasha, are we cornering our teachers? Are we being unfair to them? At the end of the day, Fiona also mentions that the more you show them this condom, the more you're opening up their minds to having sex. But do you feel well represented? Do you think the media issues are well taken to the table when it comes to advocacy? How do we convince them and say that we shut it down because you exceeded the limits? The word conservation looks just complicated, but how do we simplify this?
What role do our schools play then? And the people around our children, what role can they play in order to avoid these children becoming a menace in the society?
Yes. Caroline, you just want to sound moral, but you're just not accepting the reality on the ground.
Well, I want to sound moral and encourage it and practice it.
This is an EA production.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Debate 4-on-1. I'm Eugene Anangwe. As always, I have Gahamanyi, who's a journalist, and of course, Robert Mathu from the Capital Markets and the CEO of RDB, Francis Gatare. I have a tweet here just from a good friend of ours here who says, how has the consistent good ranking translated into tangible investment flows in Rwanda?
As I said earlier, the doing business report of the World Bank is a very important one, but it's not the only one that monitors what's happening in our economy. The World Economic Forum monitors the competitiveness of our economy, several other independent reports that never get the attention that the doing business report of the World Bank do assess our country. All these translate into the communication tools that businesses look at as they make decisions to do business in Rwanda. So let's talk the investment flows. How much of it have we seen after these rankings have happened in terms of numbers? So last year alone, we saw more than 600 million US dollars new investments come into our economy. I must say, a lot of it from Rwandans themselves or businesses based in Rwanda, but more than 50% also coming from outside. This year, we are expecting that more than 800 million will be flowing into our economy, and we are continuing to see positive trends of interest into investing into Rwanda. It's very difficult to say this is because of a single ranking, because businesses are coming as a result of their own assessments, their interests, their partnerships with other business people, and some of them as reinvestments on existing businesses altogether. But what we say is, these reports and rankings are a signal of what is happening in the economy, the transformation and the business reforms that are happening, showing the competitiveness trend that our economy continues to have, therefore contributing to the positive signal to the businesses to invest.
Good. Talking of signals, Gahamanyi, the feeling on the ground, some people have always said that, these reforms are only targeting the international investors. This is just to make it easier for the international investors, to come and give us the aid or be part of our economy. Is this the same feeling you find on the ground, that these reforms are not for local investors? These are for international investors.
I think when you're reforming the business environment, it might be difficult to say that you are just reforming for a particular investor also, because they all come in the same economy and the same country. But just when you look at these reforms, for me, I sense that there's some bit of lack of substance in them, some bit of lack of substance, because they even tend to ignore some serious issues or elements that affect business. Issues to do with corruption, for instance. Issues to do with the size of the market, for instance. Issues to do with the
political risk, even the political risk
that affects the country.
Yes.
And whether it's clear the politics of the nation can still push forward the investment and the business environment. When you go back to take an example of Burundi. They are doing well in the ease of starting business, but does it make it at the moment a good investment destination? That's a question. Then you look at take an example of ease of access to finance, and these are the issues we are highlighting. The issues to do with high interest rates, and whether even those loans that are going to the private sector are smartly distributed. We've seen consistently the agriculture sector missing out on financing, and the big loans going to the banks, to other
well-noted
sectors.
Gahamanyi, before we bring in Mathu, CEO, this issue of interest rates, of course, it's something that again is a big concern. And when you're talking of, incentives, making it easier for these people to access this money, which you say, now they are able to access, but still it's expensive. What exactly can RDB do to really deal with this issue of interest rates, the high cost of this money? What do we do here?
What we are doing, Eugene, is to diversify sources of investment finance. When businesses continue to rely on commercial retail banks for long-term investment financing, it's not consistent with the business model of the banks. That's the high interest rates, because the commercial banks are tied to the deposits, and their depositors are the sources of financing to the businesses.
So what you're saying is we cannot do anything about the interest rates, the commercial banks.
What we are looking for alternative sources of financing, and these are looking for international private equity firms, looking for other forms of investment financing, whether it's venture financing firms, or whether it's one of the things that we are encouraging our businesses to look into more closely is the capital markets, especially those existing businesses that are looking to expand, that can access money by registering into the stock exchange and raise public finance.
Yes.
Not all investments should be as a result of debt. We're also encouraging businesses to seek partnerships so that you can have others contribute equity for the longer term investment, so you don't have to get loans from commercial banks. We are also encouraging...
So there's literally nothing that RDB can do in terms of pushing for the interest rates to be reduced?
The current interest rate regime has got to change eventually because the market requires that to be.
This is an advice you're giving.
This is an advice.
Can you say that as RDB, we are saying that you sit in cabinet, high positions out there, are you able to influence this as RDB in terms of reform?
No. You cannot influence the interest rates that the commercial banks change. Only the central banks and the commercial bank through the lending relationships can do that. And that's the policy framework. And the central banks are working hard to contribute into the development agenda of our countries by looking at how to also use their own existing resources to contribute to development. But in a free market as it is, you cannot legislate interest rates that commercial banks should be charging, because it also costs them through their depositors. However, we create a conducive environment for more savings to happen, for more deposits to happen, more long-term deposits to be available, thus making it easy for the commercial banks to lend at more affordable interest rates.
And he mentions the need to work now closely with the capital markets. But the important thing again is that we have people out here who still don't even know about the capital markets. For example, Janvier here on Twitter says, what's the plan of Capital Markets Authority to have, to make known itself? I'm just reading directly how it has been written in terms of awareness creation. So how do they see that we can leave the commercial banks and work with you because the interest rates here are just too high, yet they don't know about you?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great challenge, and it is not unique to Rwanda.
Not being known.
Yes,
it's not unique to Rwanda.
It's not unique to Rwanda.
And because it's not unique, we are fine with it.
We are not fine with it.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying it's a challenge, and what we are doing about it is to drive public awareness, public education. But as we educate the public, we also, based on the good business environment, encourage more skilled capital market practitioners. So the challenges are at both levels. At the level of being able to come up with innovative products, and also at the stage where these products are able to be accessed because they are known by the consuming public. So being an investment market, people go through stages. Knowing capital market is one, having savings actually to invest in capital market is another, and also having structures in place that would be able to mobilize this long-term savings. So, however, to respond to that question, yes, we are working very hard and working together with other stakeholders, and we always work very closely with RDB in terms of making these new alternative sources of capital
known out there.
Are known out there.
Do you think they're working hard enough to give us this alternative that the CEO is saying?
This is what I'm saying. Let's go back to the aspect of financing.
Yes.
The access to finance, because it's a very critical aspect of doing business. Yes, there are all these alternatives, but you're telling us that now lenders have access to information, and even borrowers have access to information. Now, the question is, if we still have access to information, why do banks or lending institutions or financing institutions still need collateral? Immovable collateral, by the way. In this era, you're still using immovable collateral.
But the deputy vice governor was on this show, and she said that right now banks are accepting movable collateral. TVs, cows, pigs, they can accept it. Is it that you're not
for long-term capital, real investment capital?
Yes.
Not just consumer loans. Is it possible? I highly doubt. Now, and this is what we have to go through when you're going to reform the entire business environment. And it also goes back to the ability to mobilize these savings, especially even banks, to mobilize deposits. Why can't Rwanda, the Social Security Fund, tap resources from the informal sector? Today, they only capture resources from members of the working class, employed in offices and what.
But the informal sector is not
the informal
really
sector
captured.
is left out. Those are the reforms that you want to see taking place.
Are you going to add this in your list? Because it's not even in the World Bank, areas.
Yes.
Are you going to put it as a focus? The informal sector?
Let me first address the issue of financing, Eugene, because it's very important that people understand a lot of principles of financing, because you see, it's important that entrepreneurs realize that accessing financing for investment is not accessing free money. Because sometimes people confuse it and think that to access financing means you must be getting free money for you to use as you wish. It's important that also, as we talk about streamlining accessing to financing through the banks, that entrepreneurs also understand the importance of actually studying their businesses, understanding when to get debt and when not to get debt, when your business needs expansion, when your business needs to be sustained at that level so that you can have a strong presence on the market, so that when you borrow more, there is a period of investment when you may not be getting the revenues to cover that, and you are not getting into problems. And so as the government plays its role in improving access to financing, we also continue to tell entrepreneurs, be prudent in the way you use money that you borrow. Because A, this is not free money, and those who lend you will need it back, and B, when you get it and you don't pay back, there are consequences which can be detrimental to your businesses. So all these messages need to be equally communicated so that we can have successful businesses to sustain successful financial institutions as well.
Let me read a very quick tweet, because I'm told we are almost running out of time. It would be unfair for Emma, who says, doing business in Rwanda, ... taxes high, interest rate high, electricity expensive, water scarce in many areas, and is now saying we're now having silent hangouts, because if we make noise, we'll be shut down. So businesses in this area of entertainment are suffering. What's your take on that?
Entertainment is very important, and we continue to encourage investments into entertainment as Rwandans access resources to spend and to have leisure and all that.
But are you concerned by the complaints by some people who are saying their businesses are being shut down?
We are absolutely concerned.
And what is being done there?
What is being done is that we want to have a compromise between leisure and also the privacy of others, because the investments that create leisure should not be at the expense of a quiet environment of others. And so we are creating a zoning, we are creating self-regulation, we are creating a mechanism that can have those investments thrive, but without interfering with those that don't have to be privy to the entertainment sites.
What about the taxes, water, scarcity, electricity?
Look, there will always be exaggerations. We don't have everything that is required to be at the lowest cost possible. However, there is water, there's electricity, and at least we are not talking about lack of electricity. It may be expensive electricity, but it's available. And what we are working on is to have more electricity on the grid from more cost-effective sources so that our utility companies can be able to supply more affordable. For industries, government is already subsidizing. They have a lower rate than the market rate. And so this is to make them very competitive. This will take a little bit of time to bring it as low as we want, but this is what the government is doing all day. And let me make it also clear. We always say, and it's always true, all these are opportunities for businesses to invest in the energy
sector mostly.
Because then we can have more more installed capacity to be available for industries.
Super. We have very little time left. Matthew, as we move forward, as Rwanda now targets the other reforms, as we move on, what do you want not to miss in this particular area?
Well, to begin with, I just want to comment slightly about that.
The comment.
Yes.
Yes, very quickly, because time is up.
First of all, economy is about management of scarce resources. So when a society or even a business unit is faced with resources, they have to make choices. And the choices are, you feel costly, but look at what that tax is being done for you. Security, clarity of environment, clarity of doing business, faster way of doing things. So I think I would like someone to ask that question. At the same time, come out with a list of some of the key benefits that are available
as a result of that,
compared to a similar regime or a similar environment where there are other challenges.
So you would not be seated there advocating for a reduction of certain taxes or revising of the tax regime. You would not advocate for that.
I wouldn't focus on that.
You'd focus on that.
Yeah.
Gamani, as we go.
Yes.
I think my message is, this whole report looks at the laws and regulations and the policies that surround doing business. But my issue is, should we have the practical things rather than having these theoretical aspects of business? There's a difference between doing business in theory and practically doing business. This happens in most countries, especially developing countries. You have good laws, but you cannot enforce them. You've got good construction rules, but you'll get your buildings demolished halfway through the completion. Or you have laws that are protecting investors, and then the following day you'll see businesses being attached by, or even being seized by particular governments.
So in a nutshell, what's your point?
The point is, while we have these reforms in terms of the laws and policies, can we embark on the practical aspects of doing business rather than these aspects of that don't have much substance, that mainly are used as public relations tools?
So you see it as just a public relation tool?
It's largely serving that purpose of public
CEO,
relations.
as we close, and you answer that.
The World Bank's Doing Business report is important, and we have taken a choice as a country to track that and also to carry out reforms that are consistent with the indicators that it captures. But this is not sufficient. We carry out reforms that are broader than what the World Bank captures. We carry out reforms that capture the real implementation aspects of businesses, but we realize that the indices that are in this report are important proxies for the wider economy, and that's why we gave it importance. That said, we are very concerned about the continued changes of the methodology that seem to be compromising the credibility of this report.
So you're protesting to the World Bank?
We are expressing our concern that as we get away from the consistency of this report and the known and predictable methodologies, it becomes questionable what the purpose is going to be, because we worry that as this report's importance becomes more known and acknowledged and embraced by many countries, these reforms seem to be shifting in favor of some parts of the world than others. And this will not be very good in the end.
For you. Right. If these reforms are not solely or entirely or largely meant for pleasing the foreign direct investors, why would it bother you then? Even if the World Bank was to use other methodologies, but you know that on the ground, we are doing a good job and we're doing well with investors. Why should it worry you?
It concerns us because there is no flexibility to opt in or to opt out. Whether you like it, you are ranked by this report. And as a result, it will give you an image to the rest of the world and to the business community in the country of what you actually are not as an economy. And that's why the report is important, that to be taken serious. And so we want to make sure that when it does portray the image of a country or an economy, it's actually realistic and it's also a consistent image, because we want to make sure that as members of the World Bank community, we are participating productively. But as they continue to change this, we get concerned that its credibility will be questionable.
Super. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, that's all the time we had for the program. Thank you for your insights. We'll do this again next time. This is a conversation that has to continue going on other platforms. We're all on Twitter and other social media networks. We'll keep talking, right?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's keep talking again also on our Facebook and of course Twitter. Talk to us. Let us know what your thoughts are on doing business environment in Rwanda. The reforms, do they touch you? Do they make you feel, you can be able to do your business even better? Or you still have concerns? What are those concerns? Tweet at RDB Rwanda. You can also tweet at Capital Markets Authority. And of course, you can tweet me at Eugene Anangwe and at Debate 411. And we'll be able to keep this conversation going on other platforms. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. See you on Wednesday. We're talking about housing in Rwanda. You have concerns about your landlord, landlady? Let's talk about these issues on Wednesday. See you. Goodbye.
This is an EA production.